Here is the story based on the title you provided, told in 6 individual parts without headings, using simple and engaging English. In the hushed corridors of Windsor Castle, where the ghosts of 1,000 years of history seemed to whisper from the stone walls, a deeply human drama was unfolding. It was a time of profound national mourning. The Queen, the only monarch most of the nation had ever known, was gone. For Prince William, the grief was not just public but intensely personal. He had lost his grandmother, the family's steadfast matriarch, and in doing so, the fragile scaffolding that held the royal family together seemed to tremble. As the family gathered to await the arrival of the Queen's coffin at Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tensions. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, were also there, having arrived from California. The rift between the brothers had been a source of tabloid fodder for years, a wound that had festered in the public eye. On this evening, as they stood together in the grandeur of the palace, the weight of the occasion seemed to momentarily overshadow the familial discord. They were all united in their loss, a group of people bound by blood and tradition, waiting to welcome their queen home for the final time. It was after the formal reception, during the arrangements for an informal family supper, that a small but significant gesture occurred. As the family prepared to make their way back to Windsor, where the Queen would ultimately lie and rest, logistics were being discussed. The Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Kate, were heading home with their police escort. In that moment, they approached Harry and Meghan with a quiet suggestion. They offered for the Sussexes to attach their car to their official police escort for the journey back to Windsor, as they were all heading in the same direction. But it was a fleeting moment of normalcy, a crack in the icy facade. It was not a grand peace treaty, nor did it solve the deep-seated issues between them. It was simply a practical human gesture. Author Robert Hardman, in his biography Charles II, New King, New Court, The Inside Story, noted that it was only a small gesture. They would not be sharing a car, and nowhere near any sort of reconciliation. Yet, he added, it was something the late Queen would have approved of. In that simple act, Kate and William offered a momentary bridge, a recognition that for a few hours they were simply a grieving family navigating an impossible journey together. The cars drove through the night, the occupants lost in their own thoughts, the gesture hanging in the air, a tiny olive branch extended in the shadow of an oak that had fallen. The majestic homecoming of the Queen was a spectacle of solemn pageantry, but for Prince William, the ensuing months were a crucible of private anguish. The weight of his new role as the heir apparent, the grief for his grandmother, and the strain of the family rift were heavy burdens. Yet none of this could have prepared him for the blow that was about to land. In the early months of 2024, what should have been a period of recovery for his wife, Catherine, after a planned abdominal surgery, took a terrifying turn. The medical team delivered the news that no husband ever wants to hear. They had found cancer, and she would need to undergo preventative chemotherapy. The diagnosis came with a brutal, disorienting force. One moment, life was a blur of school runs and royal engagements. The next, the ground beneath him had simply vanished. William confided in friends that it was like being hit by a bus, sudden, brutal, and completely disorienting. He described the feeling as having the rug pulled from under him, a heartbreak so profound it was laced with a helplessness he had never known. To add to the surreal nightmare, this devastating news arrived within days of his father, King Charles, also being diagnosed with cancer. The future of the monarchy, the future of his family, suddenly felt terrifyingly fragile. But William had no time to fall apart. He had a wife to support and 3 young children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, who needed to be told that their world was about to change. He and Catherine knew they had to be the ones to tell them, to find the right words to explain the unexplainable. They steadied themselves, drawing on a strength they didn't know they possessed. Sitting their children down, they delivered the news with a calm they did not feel. They told them that Mummy was ill, but that she was going to be okay. It was a promise they both desperately prayed they could keep. In the days and weeks that followed, as the Princess of Wales withdrew from public life to focus on her treatment, William became the anchor of the family. He threw himself into the role of a hands-on father, cooking dinners at home and quietly organizing playdates with friends to maintain a sense of normalcy for George, Charlotte, and Louis. Behind the closed gates of Adelaide Cottage, away from the flashing cameras and the endless speculation, the future King of England was navigating the most human of crises, the fear of losing his soulmate. A close friend observed the deeply emotional experience of watching William, seeing heartbreak, fear, and helplessness all at once in his eyes. "He worships her truly. She's his world," the friend revealed. "It's love in its rawest, most powerful form." While Catherine fought her private battle, the public watched a carefully orchestrated video message in which she shared her diagnosis with the world, asking for privacy and time. Behind that brave face, however, and she was engaging in a fight that required every ounce of her being. Alongside the grueling rounds of chemotherapy, the Princess of Wales sought solace in holistic practices, immersing herself in natural healing by studying kintsugi, the ancient Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The philosophy, which finds beauty in imperfection and resilience in repair, seemed to mirror her own journey. She was being broken down only to be put back together, but strengthened and perhaps more beautiful for the scars. It was in this crucible of fear that the full depth of William and Catherine's bond was revealed to those closest to them. The crisis stripped away all pretense of royal duty and protocol. There were no crowns here, no titles, only a husband and wife clinging to each other in the dark. The memory of the early days of their relationship, when they had been torn apart by doubt and immaturity, must have felt like a lifetime ago. And the pain of that first breakup, the lessons they learned then, had built the foundation for the resilience they now showed. Many years before, in March 2007, their fairy tale romance had almost ended before it truly began. The pressure of dating the heir to the throne had become unbearable for Catherine. The constant paparazzi attention was relentless, culminating on her 25th birthday when she was ambushed by photographers outside her London apartment. Shaken and in tears, she had called William, uttering the words, "I can't take this anymore." The situation came to a head at the Cheltenham Festival, where they appeared frosty and distant, with sources claiming their relationship had soured beyond repair. Days later, William, then a young army officer, was photographed in a Bournemouth nightclub appearing to dance with an 18-year-old student, looking wild and carefree. For Catherine, it was the final straw. She delivered an ultimatum. It wasn't a demand for an immediate engagement, but a demand for clarity and commitment. She was no longer willing to be the long-suffering girlfriend. William, feeling the pressure, called her and, in a devastating 30-minute phone conversation, admitted he couldn't promise her marriage and suggested they split up. He then went to the Mahiki nightclub with friends, reportedly dancing on the podium and shouting, "I'm free!" For Catherine, it was a shattering rejection. But instead of retreating, she took control. She focused on her work and enjoyed her social life, often stepping out with her sister Pippa in glamorous outfits, attracting attention from other eligible bachelors. It was this quiet confidence, this proof that she had a life and identity of her own, that made William realize what he had lost. Stuck in his army barracks, he began to have serious second thoughts. The freedom he had celebrated felt hollow. And the reunion that would set the course for their future happened in a way that was entirely fitting for their generation, at a themed fancy dress party. In June 2007, At a mutual friend's freakin' naughty party, William and Catherine found themselves in the same room again. Catherine, dressed as a sexy nurse, and William, who made a beeline for her the moment he saw her. The chemistry between them was immediate and undeniable. They spent the evening deep in conversation, eventually ending up on the dance floor together. The pain of the past months seemed to melt away as they reconnected. This time, they approached their future with a new maturity. They knew that if they were to survive the immense pressures of royal life, they needed a solid foundation. Later that summer, they escaped to the paradise island of Des Roches in the Seychelles. Under the pseudonyms Martin and Rosemary Middleton, they spent their days kayaking and snorkeling on the secluded island. But more importantly, they spent their nights talking. Away from the prying eyes of the world, they made a solemn pact. William, who had inherited some of his father's fear of commitment, assured Catherine that she was the one. He promised her his commitment and swore he would not let her down. In turn, she agreed to wait for him until he was ready for marriage. It was a promise forged in love and sealed on a tropical island, and a promise that would be tested in ways they could never have imagined. That promise was now being tested in the most severe way possible. As Catherine underwent her treatment, William was by her side, a living embodiment of the vow he had made on that island so many years ago. The fear of losing her was a constant